Welcome to Aztec Evolves. Today we're going to be evolving our T1 Pro to add a charcoal filter in. In the original T1, there was an integrated filter. The T1 Pro removed that because the extra fans created extra noise, presumably. But we'd like to have a filter in ours so we can reduce the VOCs and the smells that come with printing things like ABS and ASA. This filter will be controlled totally by the slicer and Klipper Macros. So you have full control over when it comes on and goes off, but you don't necessarily have to think about it and remember to turn it on and off with each print. Let's get started. All right, now we've got the top of the T1 Pro off and on the bench. We've disconnected the ribbon cable, the PTFE tube, and the air line from the hose. So let's start pulling this guy off. It's a 1.5 millimeter Allen key around. So I'll use this edge. You'll see that I've already got the blue bracket there. That was for the Bento Mini. I was doing some testing before I decided to make a video out of this process. So it's already there and the connector's plugged in, but we'll go through exactly what I put there and why, and take some time to talk about how it's wired in order for us to control it from the slicer. We're going to end up having to go in and do some G-code modifications in Klipper on the T1 Pro as well. Nothing crazy, but right now they've got everything tied together so the fans are all as one, and we do not want that because we want to be able to control our filter separately. Okay, so I have pulled out 6 screws, 1.5 millimeter flat top. Pulling this off, and we've got the brains of the machine up here. And then this is the plastic piece where everything sets on the top. Slide that out of the way for now. And we are in the business here. So we've got our blue Bento Mini here. I will take this off so we can look and see exactly what has been done. I'm just removing the screws that I have on it. These are just some M3 machine screws with lock washers and nuts. I have just a little bolt assortment that I get on Amazon. I will link to in the description. Full disclosure, they are referrals, so I will get some small percentage of income at no cost to you if you decide to purchase through those links. Feel free to purchase or not, but I'm just putting them there as a reference so you can see exactly what I've got on hand for these kinds of projects. All right, so what I have here is a connector that we will tie to the fan. This is just a connector that I had on hand. You don't necessarily have to put a connector on it. I did because it makes it slightly easier whenever we go to remove the fan. You don't necessarily have to get up into here to pull everything apart. The type of connector here doesn't make a huge difference. I just happen to have this style, so I used it. The wires coming up through, I just put a couple of tie wraps on there so you're not yanking on the wires up through. It's a strain relief. I drilled a hole big enough for the wires to be able to come up and through. And then the bracket printed, I'll have linked in the description as well, pulled off of Printables or Maker World for the Bento Mini. butted up against the frame there, marked holes, and drilled them out to be able to get it up in there. Try to get it as close to center as possible, just for aesthetic reasons, whenever everything is down inside the printer. So it's kind of centered up on that back wall. Everything will work out fine if you do. So getting up into the actual unit here, I've got the wire running through this side hole, coming in alongside the fan and the control board here. And on a T1 Pro, this plug is open. On the T1 it is used, on the T1 Pro it is open because it was used on the internal fan that was removed for the T1 Pro. But now we are adding another fan to that same port. This is a 2-pin JST connector. The kit that I use is this one right here. I will also have it linked in the description to its Amazon location. It has done me reasonably well. I haven't had it a long time, but the tools that come in it seem to work fine. And it's got a pretty good selection of JST connectors if you're going to be doing a lot of printing modifications on your boards. It's also good for things like drones. They use a lot of the same connectors. So what we have is this connector here, 2-pin. This connector and the wires that go in it. Then you take the pins here and crimp them on. I will do a little side cut to crimp those in. Well, let's go ahead and do it. Let's see, how much extra do I have here? I got enough to put it in? Yep, got enough to put it in. Let's go ahead and crimp some. So, remove these 2 wires so we can do it from scratch, get those guys out of the way. So we're looking down at our board there, and we need to match positive and negative. So the next connector over, positive is farther to this side, negative is one in. So let's take our wires, strip them off a little bit. Okay, so if we look at our tool here, we've got wire gauges and letters. We're in the 20 gauge to 22 gauge. So there's a 24 to 20 that's going to be in letter D. Take the female pin that's going to mate up against the male that's inside of the connector here. And you put the ears. They're just so tiny, it's hard to really see. The positive ears, I'm going to insert a little graphic or something here to help illustrate exactly what we're doing. The ears up in there and do 1 ratchet worth. So whenever you look at your tool, it's just kind of hanging out. I'm going to trim our wire about 1/8 of an inch. 2 millimeters-ish for metric folks. Stick that wire up in there and then complete the crimp. And then you end up with a wire that's inside of those crimped ears. And we'll do the same thing to the next one. Lock it in. Push our wire up into the opening. Crimp against it. And we'll grab the 2-pin JST. If I can get it out of this container with my fat fingers. Failing miserably. And then what I'm doing is matching the colors to the connector next to it. Typically they'll positive and negative, they're not going to flop them around. So we are going to get our orientation correct. This is the way the connector goes in. The locks are on this side and the gap for the locks are on the outside of the board. So we're going to put our red in this hole, put our black in this hole. Make sure they're fully seated. You can look at them on the front, make sure they're flushed out all the way to the end. We're going to go ahead and get that guy plugged in. Okay, so now our fan is ready for power. Okay, everything else in here is good. Well, things are open. Taking a look around, making sure we are happy with everything we have. So now we're ready to start putting things back together. First things first, I need to remount my bracket since I removed that to show you guys exactly how that went on. So let me roll this up right here. Flip this around in the orientation that we are going to be inside of the printer. This guy is going to be that way, which means that I want my fan to be on this side. So looking at the front of the printer this way, I want my fan to be back here. So my bracket is going to be up against this wall and facing in towards the center. So we can definitely do that. Put the screws back in place. I have lock washer and nut that are very slippery. All right, so now we're going to get this tightened up and then we'll be ready to put this top back together because we are electrically tied in now. And finish mounting our fan, and I'm going to need to resolder these wires here to my actual fan once we get that assembly together. Okay, now that we've got the top pulled together, let's get our Bento Mini set up. These are all of the individual components already printed in ABS for a Bento Mini. Bento Mini is a smaller version of the typical bento box you see in a lot of X1 assemblies. These two pieces are for the actual charcoal containment area. We'll fill that guy up in a minute and come back to it. Right now we're worried about the fan. I've got a 6028 brushless 24 volt fan because 24 volts is what our control board is going to be outputting for control. The shroud that goes on it is going to fit on here like that. Our fan's going to be on the inside and blowing air down through our charcoal. So let's get that guy ready. I already assembled this, so we've got heat inserts in the center of there, one on each side here to hold the shroud in place, and then one on each side for the mounting brackets. There's also spaces for magnets. There's a magnet down here in the bottom and a magnet down here in the bottom of the base that you can see a little bit there, just for whenever you put the charcoal filter back in place so it snaps in decently, and then you can remove it whenever you're looking to change your charcoal out. All right, in order to line this guy up, it's actually going to end up in there kind of like this, but you take off the whole upper shroud. So let's do a little bit of surgery. We need to break off the clips on the side of the fan to remove the upper shroud. Okay, man. Oh, one stubborn one holding on there. All right. Upper shroud is removed. So this blue portion here actually becomes your upper shroud once we put everything together. We don't need the stock portion of that. You will see in a moment here how everything kind of fits together. We're going to need to notch off a little bit more at the bottom there as well. Per the instructions from Bento are also linked. Once you get the fan set up to where it'll drop down into the housing like so, we're going to need to trim it out. So according to the user guide for the Bento Mini, we're trimming it out roughly halfway down this wall in order to maximize the airflow as it comes out of the squirrel cage, not to just be redirected off to the side. So let me, a little bit of snip in here. All right. So now we'll pass our wires through the hole there. Slide down in. So now when the squirrel cage spins, it slings air down through. It's going to go through the charcoal canister, come out of the bottom, and be filtered. So that's what we're going to look like kind of in the end here. Let's get some charcoal in our unit. I've got this way too large bag of charcoal here. I don't know, you can get me a smaller bag or a funnel or something, but let's see if I can mess this up. All right, that's good enough. Well, I haven't spilled any yet. That's a miracle. I guess I shouldn't say any of that until I put the cover on, but let's see how it goes. All right, that guy in place. Let me get the screw. It in here, then lock it down. Once you get that guy in place and screwed in, then it's just flip it over and slide that down into place. The magnet and some grooves on the side hold it in pretty well. This guy's going to end up going in here and get screwed in from the back. There are two little screws down here that were already kind of hanging out in the holes from when I pulled it apart a minute ago. Let's slide them together. They're going into heat zerts that were in the front that I showed you in the lid. Right. Looking pretty decent. Nope. Forgot a part. Let me pull this back apart because I am missing two screws that hold the fan down. Got ahead of myself. I just shook it and it made more noise than I expected. And I realized I missed a step. So there are a couple of screws that go down in right here, and their whole job is just to hold the 6028 fan down in place. Just so it doesn't rattle and touch stuff. All right. Much better, much better. All right, now coming in from the back here again. Snug that up. Good. And good. All right, let's do I don't have my soldering iron set up on camera right now, so I'm going to throw these wires together right quick. All right, through the process of movie magic, these guys have self-soldered. We are ready to install our Bento Mini into the hood of our T1 Pro. Take a look at how it goes. This guy back up here. Our screws are already hanging out in place, staged up. Let's get them out of the way. Slide that into place and put our screws back in to hold our filter still. All right, there and there. Okay, guy and this guy. And then flip this around and plug her in. Now we have a filter. Now we got to put everything back together so we can test it out in the printer. All right, once all of that is done, we're going to go over to calibration on the screen, do a vibration and bed leveling calibration, let it go ahead and set itself back up. Once you've taken everything off, put it on, it skews it a little bit, so you want to let it get itself leveled back out and happy. In order to be able to check our fan, I'm going to put a little stripe of white electric tape on it so I can see that it's turning. If you've got white out or something like that, you want to make a little mark. That would also work. You just want to be able to see the rotation because the solid black on the fan is there. You can't really tell if it's turning or not. So this little white stripe will give us an indicator that things are happening. On our device page, we can now come down and turn on the box fan. And we see that our fan starts to move. We turn off the box fan. We see that our fan stops. So we have done a successful install of our internal cooling fan. Now we need to make it so the slicer will do that for us. So let's get into that. We are in our slicer. So we are currently in Orca Slicer version 2.3.1. Just for the sake of a baseline. And whenever we come into Orca Slicer, we've got a couple things that we need to do, and then we're going to need to go into Klipper on our T1 Pro and adjust the macros in order to be able to accommodate our new fan setup. First thing we need to do is get our profile for whatever filament we're going to be using with our fan. There is a way that you can set it up to run all the time with any print, but we're going to be specific to ABS and ASA right now because those are the ones that make the biggest difference for me personally. Whenever we come into here, you see material settings, and you've got all of your normal settings that you do whenever you do a filament calibration in here. We're going to go over to our cooling tab and scroll all the way down to the bottom. Our new fan is going to be set up as the exhaust fan. There's not really a filter fan set up here, but this is fan 3 as it exports a G-code. So we're going to set it up as our exhaust fan. We're going to make sure that this box, activate air filtration, is checked, and set both of these to 100. So typically you can set these so the fan blows for the exhaust at different rates to not evacuate all of your heat while you're printing, but then to cool everything down when it's done printing. But right now we only have box fan on and box fan off. So those numbers really don't mean anything to us, and since we're not exhausting, we're not removing any heat, We're just going to go ahead and set them all the way on for simplicity's sake. Now we're going to move over into Klipper and take a look at our macros there. We need to adjust the M106 macro in order to be able to accommodate our new fan control. If you've got it set up in Orca, so you have your IP address of your printer set up in here and everything communicates appropriately, you can just slide over under your device tab. If not, you can open your browser if you use a different slicer and get to the Klipper screen, but functionally it will look exactly like this one does. And we'll load up the Klipper interface page, mainsail, and then you can see I have a print going on right now. That is ASA. And you can see at the beginning of my print, it turned on the bento box and started printing. So functionally, our fan is doing its job at this moment. You can also verify that. You can see the box fan pin here in miscellaneous is enabled. So you can turn it on and off manually using this miscellaneous setting in mainsail as well within there. I've got some other macros and stuff in here that will be coming in another video, but is also available on the GitHub that's linked in the description that we'll be referencing here shortly. But what we need to do for now, we'll be going to machine over here on the left-hand side. If you don't see this menu, you can open it up. And then we'll be opening printer.cfg. Some of these other files may not be there in your printer, but this one will, and that's the important one for right now. When we open this, we'll see a bunch of numbers in here. These are all the settings that make your printer run, that tell it what kind of printer it is, and have all of the actions that are in your printer. Know what they need to do when you press buttons. Let's go down and find the one that is M106 that controls our fan speed and G-code. So this is it right here. Some of this is modified from stock. Let's go and take a look at what I've modified in order to get our fan to work. So in this differential, we can see the stuff that's over here are the things that are in the stock FLSUN GitHub as of today. So they may not be exactly what you have. They are current FLSUN firmware. Depending on what version you're on, may change slightly what you see in here. But the basis of what we need to do still stays the same. You'll be able to copy and paste this from the GitHub linked in the description, but for the sake of explanation, we'll go through it right quick. So you see up to fan speed right here is exactly the same left and right. We have added this line for fan selection. Fan selection allows us to take the P parameter that comes in behind the M106, and if it's number 3, we're going to use that for our thing. So this fan selection comes in. It's the default parameter to tell it which fan to turn on. If that fan is number 3 and the fan speed that we've set is greater than 0%, then we're going to turn on our box fan. Filter on. If that fan selection is number 3 and the fan speed is 0%, then we're going to turn off our box fan. So we're using the default codes that are coming from the slicer and just handling them in the way that we want to handle them. This other stuff down here is exactly what they were doing. So if the fan is not set to 3, then handle it just like you would handle it in any other situation in the stock firmware. So we're only modifying this specific version of the code, and then everything else passes through exactly like it would in any normal day. Now that you've got a basic understanding of exactly what it is that we're changing and what we're not changing, let's go over and take a look at it in GitHub. So in the Aztec Evolves GitHub that's linked in the description, this is what you'll see whenever you come up to it. There's a whole write-up down here of exactly what we're looking to do and some of the basics that I recommend changing to enable excluding objects in your T1, so you can go in and exclude individual objects while you're printing and things like that. But this also includes the modifications that we're looking to do. So if you scroll down past these first couple of blocks, you'll see the M106 block here. And it's got everything that you need to be able to be copied and pasted. and a short description of exactly what is intended with these. It's up to you whether or not you want to adopt all of the other macros coming in a future video, but this is an easy way to go and grab that code exactly as it needs to be in order to be able to paste it directly into your Klipper macro config. So what you want to do is copy the code from the GitHub. You can just copy up to this M106 down to this end F here. Before we get into the macro set fan, right click copy. We'll slide back over to where we were. And then you'll copy from this line right above set fan here, all the way up to M106 and paste. I'll put another end in there just to have a visual break for the code. It doesn't really change much. One last thing that's worth verifying, just to make sure that it's there, is scrolling up a little bit and coming through this section here, and we're going to look for our end print code. In our G-code macro called end print, we will see box fan off. That's going to verify that the box fan will be turning off. Your slicer should turn it off anyway because it's going to be turning off that third fan that we set up for it. But this just verifies that it's going to go off no matter how we end the print. And in a cancellation or anything else, they'll always turn that box fan off. So from here, if we want to turn on the box fan for every single print rather than from a filament specific perspective, we could do it here in the start print. See, I've got one commented out here, but if you were to just type box fan on under this block, then every single time you start a print, right before the print actually starts, it'll turn that fan on, and then it'll move into the print code itself coming from your slicer. So you could potentially not turn anything on in your slicer and just change in your Klipper macro here, box fan on, and then every single print that you turn on, that fan will be enabled for the entire print, and then whether or not you end the print or cancel the print, it'll turn off here, and your slicer doesn't even have to be involved in the process whatsoever. I like it to be controlled by the slicer, so I set it up to where it comes out of Orca, but no matter your slicer, you can come and set it up for box fan on here, and it will turn on the box fan and the filter every print, no matter what. And up here, there's a save button. Now it's saved successfully. If I wasn't in a print, there would be a blue button here that said save and restart. If you're not actively doing anything on your printer at this moment, which you're probably not, you can safely click that and have your printer restart with a new config. If you just want to save it and then restart later, you can come back to your dashboard here, finish your print, get your printer in a safe space, then hit this power and do a firmware restart from here. When you do that, it'll restart and load the new config, and then your new setup is in place. So that's it, everyone. Now you've got a filter fan set up in your T1 Pro to try and reduce some of the particulates going out into the air and possibly some of those smells with certain filaments whenever they're printing. Hope you found this useful. Leave a comment below if you think I should have done something differently, or if you think of a way that I can make this setup better. And thank you for watching.